Welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is still to have real, insightful conversations with people that we find interesting and on topics that we find interesting. And today we have a guest on, Dylan Kaplinger. So I met Dylan about just, I guess, almost a year ago, or a little over a year ago, and got to know him a little bit, and then missed him for a few months, and then now got to see him again, and come to find out Dylan's really interested in the same topics that we're interested in. He finds value in the same things we find value in, and he had a transformational moment. What was the name of that podcast we did on Kairos? Mm-hmm. He had his own kind of Kairos moment that I thought would be interesting to have him come on, talk about, and then talk about what's going on now after that Kairos moment. For those of you that didn't listen to the Kairos podcast, it's this transformational moment that, quite frankly, you don't know is coming, and it just happens. And then what do you do when it does happen? So I'll let Dylan talk a little bit about what happened, and then we'll go from there. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks. Yeah.
So about a year ago, I was involved in a car accident where I broke my C2 vertebrae. So I broke my neck. Essentially, I was forced to be in a neck collar for 4 months.
Yeah.
And I think I was just having the conversation. I'd like to think of my life like pre and then post-accident. Try to compare the two because I feel like I changed. In pre-accident, I didn't have intentionality. Post-accident, that was the big key. I feel like my life changed. I was on the brink, kind of. It almost felt like I died. I didn't die, but it felt like I did for a second, and that brought me intentionality. So I think, that kind of changed the game for me.
So just for a second, and we can delete anything we don't like here, but talk to me a little bit about, you said you rolled over 3 times. Mm-hmm. What was that like being were you upside down? You straight?
So I didn't have a seatbelt on, was in the back seat. We initially got hit, flipped 3 times, and then when I woke up, I was on my side. My mom, who was in the passenger seat, was then in the back seat with me. So It was like crazy. I thought it was a dream. It felt like a dream. I kept saying to my mom too, like, this is a dream. She was like, no, it's real. We just got hit. So it was kind of crazy. I'd never been in something traumatic like that. And it was weird. I remember they had to cut the doors off to get us all. And then I had 2 firefighters kind of wrapping me above each shoulder, walking me to the ambulance, still kind of not really aware of what was going on, so much adrenaline rushing. And it wasn't until I was in the hospital that it kind of set in that, like, what just happened? It wasn't a dream anymore.
What did you feel like as that was kind of going on? Is that the first thing you kind of said? Like, is this a dream or so?
Yeah.
You get. I think you had shared earlier. You got hit from behind. The car flips. Obviously, you probably don't really remember a whole lot of that. Just all jumbled. But yeah, then it lands. Then what?
Just a dream. I don't know. It didn't feel real. It's such a hard feeling to explain. It wasn't like something I can put into words. Besides, it was like when you're dreaming, say you're sleeping, but you know it's a dream. You're like, oh, this is a dream. That's the feeling I thought. And then it wasn't a dream. It was actually happening.
Yeah.
That's what kind of...
just totally unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable, yeah.
And what about your mom?
In what sense?
Is she okay?
She's okay. She's just, her foot got pretty banged up, so she has a limp for a while. She's been working with PT for about 10 months now. So
we're coming up on a year anniversary here?
Coming up on a year, yep, April 19th. So
you were in this, you have the accident, then you're in this collar, you can't move your head. Did you ever lose your ability to walk or anything like that?
Not really. I do remember, I think one moment that was serious. After the accident, for about 2 days, I didn't move, so I was completely in a bed, and I didn't know what it was going to be like walking. I didn't even try. So the first time they had me walk a few days post-accident, I remember immediately falling, and it was like, I'd just come from training for a marathon. I was like, I'm in the best shape of my life, and now I can't walk. Wow. And that's when it was like, oh, shit. That's when I knew the journey would be long. It wasn't not even comparable to my stepfather, who's paralyzed. He had no feeling in his legs. But it was just, for me, it was like going from, 19 years old, the best shape of your life, you're a trainer, your whole job's fitness, your whole life is fitness. Now it's not, you know?
And what is your father-in-law making strides? How's this going for him?
Yeah, he's walking with walkers. He has some feeling in his legs, so they'll say he'll walk again, which is great.
Oh, wow.
He's put a lot of work in. So
Was he driving?
he was driving, yeah. And I was actually supposed to be driving, which is crazy too.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So it was like easily could have been in that position. And then you start to post-accident, stayed in the hospital for around 4 days, and then lived with my father in Halifax. And post-accident, you're sitting like, oh, if I was driving, I would have been able to counter steer. Or had I gone to the bathroom before, we would have missed. Or had they got an Uber, this would have never happened. You start to play that game, like what if, what if, what if. But you can't play that game. You get in your head about this should have happened or this shouldn't have happened, you know?
So you've come full circle on that. You realize it doesn't serve you.
There's no purpose. It happened. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing anybody can do to, you know, not let that happen or not have happened. So.
And so what's the lasting effects for you now as far as your mobility?
Just limited range of motion in my neck, but I try to not ever make that excuse. That was one thing I told myself was like, don't ever put yourself in a position where you're, I can't do that because my neck. It's like, I can do it. You know, that's why I signed up for the Ironman, to prove to myself, to give myself some evidence that like, no, this is part of your past. It's part of who you are now, but it's not limiting you.
Not going to define you.
No.
So I heard you say you were training for a marathon?
Training to complete a marathon, and then it happened.
And now you are?
Now I'm skipped the marathon, went straight into a half Ironman.
Wow.
So.
And that and how far is the swim?
1.2 miles.
So now I don't know. I swim in a pool, and I have range of motion in my neck, and I struggle to turn my head over into my shoulder and breathe. How's that going?
That's challenging. That's the biggest feat.
Yeah.
But it was like, I'm not letting this accident inhibit me or prohibit me from doing anything. Like if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Awesome.
So, yeah, you kind of chatted about like post-accident and feeling like the what ifs, right? What other kinds of emotions? I mean, I'm sure there's a whole wide range of them, but what did that look like?
I think it went in phases. So it was initially like grief. Like, why did this happen to me? I initially thought, like, did I do something wrong? Was I mean to somebody, or what made this? Why did like God have this happen to me? And then it was blame. It was, all right, well, I shouldn't have been driving, or I shouldn't have been there. They should have got an Uber. This should have been avoided completely. And then I quickly got out of that frame, you know, through the help of, did a lot of reading, a lot of reflection, podcasts. My dad was a great help. Just kind of embracing the suck was something he just kept telling me. He's like, just embrace the suck. So I think, you know, those mental frameworks helped me kind of grasp the idea and move on from it.
Were there any specific books that kind of like resonated during that time?
Going More by Nick Bare. That was one of my favorite books, A High Performing Mind. I think I read, so I was with my dad for 3 months. I want to say I read 6 books, and I wish I had the list of all of them. The Book of Five Rings, Miyamoto Musashi was one of them. Emotional Intelligence, Cal Newport, Deep Work. I'm trying to remember them right now. And there was a few others, but it was a lot of reading, a lot of podcasts. Chris Williamson's one of my favorite podcasts, Modern Wisdom. So just kind of reframing.
Wow. So when you know, fitness and movement dictates your life. Or I mean, how many hours a day are you training for your Ironman now?
It's around 12 to 15 hours a week on top of work. So it's a commitment.
So, and before that you were training for a marathon, so probably something like 3, 4, whatever that
long
is.
runs. Yeah.
So, and then you went from that to not even being able to walk.
No.
And then you chose to, through this process, do kind of some deep inner work through learning. And so now, what are you doing now? You sent me a couple of your newsletters. Talk to us a little bit about, you know, one thing you mentioned was like this idea of intentionality. And I know for me, I'm only speaking for myself here, so maybe you found it a lot. But You're a decade ahead of me before I even considered this concept of intentionality. So talk to us a little bit about that concept, and then a little bit about what you're doing now.
So that was intentionality was Nick Bare. That was the Go One More book, and I think forget which chapter which it was, but it was choose intentionality, and it was the idea that like, you know, this was the first time that I was faced with the fact that life is short. You don't know when it can end. You could be in the best shape of your life. You could be young. You could be old. It's not really up to you. You know, it was a freak accident, wrong place, wrong time. And intentionality was moving forward. It was, you know, you can't control always what happens to you, but it is your choice how you respond. So intentionality was just correcting, trying to kind of see it, where in my life was I wasting time, focused on the wrong things, and then choosing to then where do I want to be and how do I get there, and then make the intentional choices to try to get to that spot.
So I can't remember if you said it during the recording or not, but you said you didn't die, but it felt like you did, and I think that's a great way to put it, because I mean you know, part of you died, you know, that's for sure, and a part of you was reborn in some sense, and so as far as you're concerned, it was pre-accident was what, and post-accident was how, right? How would you describe that difference?
I would say pre-accident, like the biggest word I've been saying is intentionality, and that's something I didn't have. And I think it's like you have to go through some sort of event like this or reflect a lot on your own to realize that like you don't know when your life could be over, and the clock is always ticking, and you don't have as much time as you think you do. You know what I mean? And it just depends on kind of what are the things you want and how bad are you willing to work for them to get them. And I think that, you know, I never say I'm glad the accident happened, but I don't think I'd have that mental framework if it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, man, when I just think about the 19-year-olds that you know, and what I was like when I was 19, and I imagine what you were like when you were 19. I mean, first of all, we weren't going to die. That's number one, right? When you're 19, that's not even an option. You're going to, and old is somewhere around 40.
Yeah.
So I'm old now. But, you know, those are things you don't, intentionality is not even a thing. I mean, it's, what are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? What's my next 2, 3, 4, 5 days look like? What can I look forward to? When's vacation? What am I going to do in college? You know, all of this stuff that is just, but never with any real foresight, never with any real thought, just the next. So you went through this thing and you gained this power, you know, in some ways, right? You gained the power of intentionality, and from the stuff you've been sending me, it sounds like you are starting to spread this message. And let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about the messages that you like to spread and what you found as your purpose.
I think you can relate to my situation even if you weren't in a car accident. I think like that's just what happened to me. But you could have went through a breakup. You could have dropped out of school. You could have flunked out of school. Anything could have happened to you. I think it's all relative. And I just found that me kind of explaining my journey and my process, if that can help one person, then great. Because when I was in need of help, that's what I was searching for. You know, after the car accident, I needed somebody to relate to. And that's where I found Nick Bare. That's where I find these books and these podcasts. So it's if I can do the same thing that they did to me to then help others, I think that's what it's about. You know, just that's my purpose, is to help and serve others, I think, and through fitness and health. Okay. You know, I found my pursuit and my kind of vessel to do it through, but that's the overall goal.
What does it mean to, like, I guess in your eyes, like as you're helping people, what are you actually doing?
I think opening people's minds to their own abilities, like self-improvement. Like that's my biggest thing is self-improvement. And I think anybody, how do I put this? Like going through something kind of serious and traumatic is the perfect gateway to self-improvement. I think you almost need it. It's like, I forget, I'm probably butchering the quote, but it's something about like hitting rock bottom, and that's like the perfect way to catapult back up. Is to be at your worst, be at your most vulnerable. That's a perfect starting place to then work yourself back up into a better version.
Well, I think Ryan and I, one of the things we have in common is one of our favorite books is Man's Search for Meaning. Have you read that yet?
Viktor Frankl, is that what it is?
Yep. And he says, when it all boils down and you can't change the circumstances, you have to change yourself. And that's where you got. That's where it was for you. And it sounds like Viktor was right again.
Yeah. It's perfect.
That's ultimately we'll grasp and we'll try to change the scenario and try to rethink it and try to change the people that are in our lives and the jobs we have and all this stuff. But if you can't, you truly just cannot change the circumstance, then you have to choose to change yourself, and you change yourself for the better. And as someone who's older now and has seen people go through traumatic events, it's not. There's no reason to quantify it, but not everybody chooses that path, right? Many people choose the victim. Many people choose the why me. Many people would be sitting here today saying, I have lack of range of motion in my neck, so I don't do X, Y, and Z. Or, I'm not going to get that job because I can't do X, Y, and Z. And I think that to hear you speak so eloquently on it at such a young age is impressive to me. You're an impressive young man to me personally. And I think people relate to that. People are looking for that. And I see you in the gym training your clients, and I can tell that people are looking, even people older are looking up to you and seeing the way you handle yourself and the way you carry yourself. So kudos.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that, you had said something actually really important, that it doesn't take a car accident to do this. It could be a breakup, it could be a life change, it could be job loss, it could be whatever, and we need an answer to those kinds of questions of meaning, say, or those events of meaning. And like you were saying, MJ, I think often is the case that people take the answer that doesn't necessarily serve them. They might just say, well, I'm not, if I'm playing victim, I can't do these things. I didn't choose that. I didn't choose that answer. It was just bestowed upon me. But, come to find out that it actually is an answer. And we've talked about other lines of thought here. Courage to be Disliked, that kind of Adlerian. Did you read this book, Courage to be Disliked? Okay. Yeah. It's a good one. And he basically, what they discuss is that even victimhood is an answer, is a way to say, well, here's how I'm coping with the situation, right? And so we have multiple avenues to answer the question of meaning that comes from these big events, and you took it and really ran with it. And as MJ says, I mean, it's actually pretty clear that you're embodying a lot of like what you're even just scratching the surface of, right? At 20 years old, I mean, I can't imagine. So that's really great, man. And I love it. We've talked with other young folks, and there's a little something different about you. So you're going through, you're writing, you're teaching, you're helping people. You're doing it through the medium of fitness. What do you believe fitness offers people?
A chance to improve. Going from I lost a lot of muscle. I was struggling to kind of get my legs under me coming straight from the accident. Obviously, coming from the highest level I was to the lowest level I've been, the answer is fitness. That whole pursuit of whether you're just getting into it or you're recovering from something, it's through that. That's the vessel. It's fitness, and I always knew it was fitness. You could improve. I don't go to the gym necessarily just for muscles. I go for the discipline it gives me in work and in relationships. It's all relative. And I think the fitness is just the umbrella, but everything's below it.
Yeah.
Self-improvement, anything mindfulness. I think it's all relative. Recovery, that's all thing.
Talk to us a little bit about the way you I mean, obviously you already mentioned it with the books that you're reading, but what types of ways are you working to keep your mind and get your mind back, or keep your mind right, or those types of things?
So one thing that the accident did for me was faith. I went to church once in a while growing up, maybe on the major holidays. I did like CCD, but that offered me, faith in Christ. That's something that if the accident hadn't happened, I don't think I would do. Also journaling as well. So those two things have been very prominent, almost daily prayer. I go to church every Sunday with my mother now, and that's something that I don't know if I'd pick up at a young age,
Tell me more about that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, because how does that come about? And I don't want to even pretend to know the answer.
I don't know. I just think something to lean back on, that it's not in my control. That God, I've heard the phrase, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. So I think that that quote right there reframed it. No, this was supposed to happen. You can't go through life without challenge, without hardship. And through going through this is what's going to make you stronger. And that really changed. That life's, I think nowadays people think life is supposed to be a cakewalk. It's supposed to be handed to you. But I think you have to go through difficult things, whether it's a breakup, it's a car accident, it's losing your job. That's for the better. You may not think it now. And in the moment, I didn't. In the moment, it was victim. It was why me, why me? But now it's it's hard to say you're glad it happened, but because of it, I'm stronger. Mm-hmm. So
that's not a unique experience at all. In fact, that even, your stepfather, they do have data on people who get into really severe accidents, and they almost always rate their life better afterwards, which you wouldn't think. And, sure, that spiritual, transformation, I suppose, could happen without the accident. That'd be great. Mm-hmm. But, for those who it does happen to, making the most of it, and that people seem to use those kinds of things very well. That's interesting. I mean, you brought up a good point. God kind of bestows the toughest battles amongst the toughest warriors. Jesus says something like that too. It's to the man who has much, much is to be expected of them. And so this idea of aiming to your highest potential, every single day. I mean, that's exactly what intentionality is. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of ways, it really was just this strength in your faith that really changed a lot about how you go about your day.
And I think there was two ways I could have went. I could have went the way I did, which thankfully I did, mm-hmm. or I could have went the way of the victim and just kind of sulked on the accident, used it as an excuse. And I think that's the choice that everyone's given. Just finished up Mark Manson, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Mm-hmm. It's a good book. And he talks about, I touched on it earlier, you are responsible for everything that has happened in your life thus far. And it's not necessarily saying that, I was responsible for the accident. I wasn't driving the car that hit us, but I am responsible on what I choose to do because of that, how I respond to that. So I think that's, even though I just read that now, that was the framework that I had. And then I just didn't let that victim mentality kind of get to me. So
if you can let that one lesson drive you, you're going to save yourself so much heartache. Mm-hmm. We talked about this, and it keeps coming up in my world, is, you're the CEO of your life. But the reminder is that once you were an 8-year-old CEO, and that 8-year-old CEO didn't do everything right. And you were a 19-year-old CEO, and maybe you weren't doing everything right. You were on a different path. And then this happened, and now you're a 20-year-old CEO, and you're learning the lessons of the CEO, and you're mm-hmm. working towards understanding, the truth is you're responsible for every single thing, regardless of how often society will tell you otherwise. And we live in a society that's totally okay with telling you otherwise. I think that's the part that we push back on, and it's tough to explain that to somebody. You're doing a better job of it already, just from telling your story. I think a lot of people, when you tell them that, they frown at you, or they'll go, I don't necessarily believe that. But coming from where you came from, and taking that ownership the way you are, I think is number one, it's a testament to you, and number two, I think a lot of people, our audience specifically, can learn from that. So good work.
And that's what I want to help people do. Just like you said, like what is your purpose, and to serve others, and to show people the exact opposite of what I think society tells you. Is like, it's not your fault. It's, a little bit more coddling and a little bit more soft, which at times that's the right thing. But I think many of the times it's the opposite. So if I can be an advocate for, no, it is your responsibility, it is your choice, it is your obligation, then that's what I'll do, and that's what I'll be, because I think a lot more people need to hear that than we all think.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we've MJ and I have had plenty of public and private conversations on the topic of, you can be a driven, intentional, purposeful being and still be kind to yourself, right? You don't necessarily have to be like, kind of like you suggested, like, you don't necessarily have to, coddle and say it's not your fault and blah, 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 blah. You can be super kind. I mean, we're humans, we have one part, very, very human, very, very driven by its own kind of desires and temptations in terms of like laziness and resistance and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's very true, and that's okay. But then we have the other part, the more like, intentional mind kind of driven part of us that can, like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to teach fitness. I want to do a Ironman, and so like merging the two, the intentionality with the fact that like being respectful and kind to yourself, the fact that you're human and some things are just hard because of that. How have you been? I think it seems to me that you're kind of a kind person to yourself. I don't know why that is. I think you could just kind of tell with people.
I agree.
And at the very least, you're at least somewhat intentional about that. Talk to me about that kind of idea.
I think that's the hardest part, though, is like the whole idea of balance. Yeah. And that's something I struggle with every day. And that's something I try to relay to people, that it's like, I don't think it's something you figure out. I think it's something you just have to work on. There's points in times where I'm not very soft on myself. It's like, no, you signed, like right now, like you signed up for this race. I don't care if you're tired. I don't care if you're sore. You're going to do it. Maybe after this, I'm a little bit more soft and a little bit more, nice job, Dylan. You did good. So I think it's periods of time. And I think balance is a tough word, especially for me. I struggle with balance because I don't give myself the excuse. Like, I'm young. This is the most energy I'll have. This is probably the most free time I have before hopefully a family. So it's like, this is the getting shit done phase. And maybe I can sit back in a recliner when I'm a little bit older, but I think now is the go time. But in points of times, I think you do need to be a little bit easier on yourself. And I don't think I'm the best advocate for that, I'll be honest. Just because like it's just natural right now to just get after it. Yeah. But hopefully one day I can be a little bit better on being softer on myself.
What about this journaling? Do you have a journal and be soft on yourself?
I think there it is. That's my outlet, is journaling. And I don't think if I didn't have that, I'd be a lot harsher. But being able to reflect on, some journal prompts of just how are you actually feeling? You know what I mean? And that's tough because I'm a guy. I feel like that's kind of, I don't know, we're not taught that as a male to kind of be soft on yourself. It's always like the David Goggins, type mentality. Right. Which I'm like that sometimes, and I enjoy that. But journaling's my outlet to be soft on myself and just kind of let honesty flow, through the pen and just see what comes out.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to hear you say that because we aren't taught to be soft on ourselves, right? Everything is.
Well, men aren't. Yeah, the masculine message is do more, be more. Forget about emotions. That's and it's not even the masculine message. I mean, it certainly is, but it's not only that. That's the masculine energy, right? That's what masculine energy is, and you could feel that in people. You could feel when someone like has that like masculine energy, and David Goggins is an example of like far too much, right? Yeah. Far too much, and it doesn't necessarily mean that. It's not a bad or good thing. It just kind of is, right? And then you have someone, the other side, the flip side, the feminine energy is very caring and nurturing and very people oriented, right? Masculine, very thing-oriented, very objective-oriented. And I think in a lot of ways you could see that manifest in people, and you can even look at that in yourself and see where the balance is. Ultimately, balance is best. I mean, the message that comes through, the wisdom that comes through everything that I know is that we need balance.
Balance is the way to go, yeah. I used to, when I used to run, you know, because screw you, man, like, you're fat and you're out of shape and you need to run. And now when I'm running, I'm literally intentional about the fact that I'm running because I know this is going to be good for me. I know it is good for me. I know I feel good when I'm done. And yeah, it does still, I'm still not great at it and I still don't really enjoy it, but I'm doing it for totally different reasons. And this second way, unlike David Goggins, the second way for me is what works. That's what gets me on the treadmill. Okay, I can do it because I know I can, and I know I'm going to feel good after. The old way was like, I'm doing this because I'm overweight and I don't want to be overweight anymore, and it's stupid, and I have to, you know, run and all the bad things. And I ran a lot less, but you know, but the balance ultimately, and there are still days where I'm like, no, I'm running because F you shouldn't have done all those stupid things, and so I'm going to run it off and. You know, run with the hangovers even better because it's, you know, matter or whatever. But yeah, balance is...
Both are good, like, fuel sources. I mean, if that's what it takes, if it takes sometimes Goggins to flip the switch, and that's what it takes. But yeah, I agree with balance. That's definitely something I'm always working on, or I'm trying to.
Yeah.
But I think there's a time and a place, you know, to be soft on yourself, and there's a time to be Goggins on yourself, you know?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's the tools. They're just tools,
exactly.
right? And you know, a lot of our pursuits, whether you know, they really boil down in a lot of ways to self-acceptance, right? Almost everything we do is can I get to a place where I accept myself? I mean, most of the people that all three of us work with, that's their main. You know, we see it. It's like, oh, I want to lose X amount of weight or whatever, or gain X amount of muscle pounds, because then I'll feel good, and then I can like. Do whatever it is that I actually want to do, you know, like then I can accept myself and feel good. But the problem is that the avenue that we take through that is usually we practice self-rejection, right? I reject how I acted yesterday, how I acted last week, last year, and I'm going to do everything against that. But the problem is that self-rejection only leads to self-rejection. Someone puts on 50 pounds of muscle, yet there's a person in the world that has 50 pounds more than them. And so that's a good enough reason to then practice the self-rejection again. Same thing with the weight loss. Like, oh, I'll be happy once I lose 50 pounds. Well, then you get there and it's like, well, I don't look like... It's a vicious cycle, yeah. Yeah, I don't look like that person. And so, you know, I think at bottom line is that you have to practice self-acceptance through the changes that you're trying to make. Otherwise, all you're going to end up with is just a really fed part of self-rejection, you know, and that's not good.
No, that's not good.
No.
I mean, how often I had some people this morning that I've been training in, and they're in great shape, like sculpted arms, strong legs, looking awesome, and they're standing in front of the mirror staring at like their belly button. What about this spot? It's like, okay, yeah, okay, yes, there's more fat than you probably, you know, than that person over there has, but you look awesome. You know, you're doing all the right things. You're eating right. You're sleeping good. You're doing all the things. Start accepting yourself. Start saying, I am doing all the right things. Also, and I look forward to working on this particular part of me now.
Yes.
And I think that's a message for all of us out there, because I know we all do it in some aspect of our life where there's something in our life that isn't perfect. It's not going exactly the way you want it to go. And it doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're not. It doesn't mean you have to hate yourself for it or blow up the whole thing because one aspect of your world isn't going the way, you know, you want it to go. But we'll dwell on it. It'll be the driver in conversations. It'll be the driver in our day. And when we start to accept ourselves for who we are, the whole world opens up. You get to start to look at things differently. You get to start look at relationships differently, people differently, your day differently, time differently. I was joking with someone the other day. We were talking about books that, you know, that we were reading or whatever, and I was like, he had like 6 or 7 self-help books that were great books. And I was like, do you ever read any fiction? And he's like, I don't have any time for that. I'm like, okay, like that's one way to look at it. Or you could balance it out a little, enjoy life, enjoy a good book that's, that you don't know what's going to happen. And, but so many of us, we get trapped in this, only that, only gotta do this, gotta do that, gotta do this. I think that's because we don't accept the fact that we don't have to do that. We can, sit back and just be. The yogis, we talk about just be all the time. Hardest thing to do.
Very.
Very, very hard to do. A lot easier to do when you accept yourself. When you start to accept exactly who you are and relax, what's the word? Relax, allow, and trust. Then you can start to be. And even that has an edgy feeling to it until you practice it. But it is possible. I think that's a message that a lot of people don't understand, and we should probably expand on in one of these times.
It's a deep one. You can go deep in there, accepting yourself. But that's definitely something I can relate to. It's go, like foot on the pedal a lot. And I say that because I'm young. I give the excuse like, well, I have energy. There's people that wish they had my energy. And if they wish they had my energy and I'm not taking advantage of it, that's not good. You know what I mean? Because there'll be a point where hopefully I achieve more and I have more achievements and, evidence to show for it when I'm, say, 30 or 40. But I'll wish I had the energy I had when I was 20. So it's kind of like this back and forth. And I wrote the newsletter on that too, about trying to be where your feet are. I forget who said that, but like just be in the moment. And I think that's tough. Whether I know you guys are like this as well when you're a high achiever and there's things that you want to accomplish, because you're not there yet, it's hard to accept where you are, accept yourself, because I'm not at that stage yet. I haven't owned this gym or I haven't made this salary goal, whatever it is. So just being where your feet are is something I've been practicing.
Good.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, it's super important because you have energy now. You're super young. You got all that kind of zest. Yet only a certain amount of time to learn still the lessons that help all people that eventually everyone has to learn, or they're just struggling. I work with people sometimes like 60 years old and they're like really just trapped in their mind of I got to be productive, and it just so happens a lot of the time the more you force and try super hard, sometimes further away the goals get. And having some humility over the fact that maybe you don't know what you actually want, maybe you don't know what you actually need, and maybe you don't know what's good for you, and sometimes that's just found in silence. Sometimes that's just found in sitting with yourself. And that's probably, as you were mentioning that, I was thinking that's a good test for a lot of people. Can you sit with yourself, just nothing else going on? And how does that feel? Or can you look at yourself in the mirror for like 10 minutes? How does that feel? Right? I would imagine, and I know all well and good personally, that can be a very icky feeling sometimes. Even sitting there with nothing on your schedule and saying, well, I'm not being productive today. Like those thoughts start coming up.
Yeah, my schedule is not booked up. You know what I mean? It's not. That was another thing in the book was productivity versus busyness. Just seeing that just because you're busy, are you really productive? So intentionality, that's where that came in. Are the choices, does my schedule reflect on where my intentions are? Or is it just busy for the sake of, I was here today and then I drove here and then I was here. Like, I didn't get home till 10. I was productive. I was busy. You kind of just were filling that time with blank space. You know what I mean? So
guilty. Big time.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about that a little more though, because you hit a kind of a hot button for me. Does my schedule reflect where my intentions are? Unpack that for me a little bit, because I'm thinking about your typical 9-to-5 worker that is prioritized their day job, right, over maybe a lot of things. Tell me what you mean by that. Talk to me a little bit. Does my schedule show what my intentions are?
So have you guys heard of the value action gap?
Remind us.
So, or at least the frame that I'm most familiar with is, does the actions that you take reflect on what you value? So you look at your schedule. Let's say I value family time. I value self-care. I value fitness. And then you look at your schedule. Well, none of that represents any of those three values. I'm doing something wrong. So like that was the case for me. It was intentionality. Maybe it was growth in my own personal business, and say it was spending time with my girlfriend. And then I look at my schedule. There's not really enough time to get those three things in. I'm doing something wrong. So it was changing your schedule to represent what you actually value, and not just being active for the sake of saying you're busy and using, busyness as a proxy of productivity, because it's not. You have to be intentionality with your actions.
Sure. Yeah, because you can be busy and make all sorts of money, but at the end of the day, if that's not actually what you value, then it's quite the gap.
Yeah.
Values work is awesome. I really love that. I've taken it a couple times across maybe the last decade, and just looked at a bunch of values. You can get this list online or whatever, and you can go through and you say, well, which ones actually are meaningful to me? And spend some time, because there might be values that you think are meaningful to you, or like society tells you like, hey, we should value this, but are maybe not meaningful really truly to you. And then you can even decide. Like humility, like I can intellectually, I know humility is probably like a really great value. So how do I actually prioritize this? How do I act with more humility, right? And then you have your list of, you pick like 5. And then you just say, how can I live these out? And for a little while, I had those that list of mine in my wallet, and I would just kind of refer to it. Now I carry around notebooks all the time now, so now I can just refer to the list in the notebooks. But yeah, that's great, and I like the idea of tying that to your schedule and kind of saying, well, if I value family time, yet I'm working until 9 p.m. Do you actually?
Clearly, I don't value it.
This is what I'm hung up on, and it's this it's the calendar aspect of it, right? I'm just thinking my phone's over here, flipped down, but man, if I looked at my calendar right now, it would not reflect my values, not even a little. It would, and that's
or does it?
Or maybe
that's
it
the
does.
scarier part.
Maybe. Obviously, there's some financial tie there, right? I value money. I see money as security, and so one of my values is security for sure. So maybe I'm just very heavily weighted in that scenario. I guess I'm trying to make excuses for myself. I value travel, so that's on there, right? I have a vacation planned. But yeah, on a day-to-day basis, my calendar's with to-dos. My calendar is almost exclusively to-dos. And that's definitely in lieu of time I could be spending on self-care, or with my wife, or with my family. And so thank you for this discussion.
Yeah. I love
that's
talking
helping
about
me.
it too. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to work on this.
Yeah, it's an important one.
From a place of acceptance, though.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that previous, I would have been over here stewing, beating myself up. You know that stuff. You should be better at this. But I don't think that's the case today, which is kind of a cool, eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah, it's good unlock. Very good unlock. It's all perspective. I think that's all life is just perspective.
Yeah.
You have multiple different perspectives, and they all lead you down different paths.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, actions can be from the perspective of disrespect, rejection, unkindness, or ulterior motives, or they could be from genuine authenticity and caring and respect. They actually could be quite the same. Going to the gym, that's one I deal with every single day, right? Going to the gym, people are doing it out of this place of I was told to, I have to, I've got rules, it's obsessive. If I don't, then I'm, bad, I'm immoral. Versus going to the gym is it's my time. I care for myself, I care for my body. they look the exact same. You know, they can often look the exact same. The action can be literally identical, but the path that you take to it is really, really important. And so, yeah, I love that idea, the perspective. You also kind of like touched on an important topic. Yeah, you kind of are who you are in each moment. You know, change is so fascinating. We love the topic of change. To me, it's personally just the most fascinating thing of all. And you know, what I've come to realize, you know, for myself and other people is that I am who I am, you know, today, and I was the same person yesterday in many ways. But I can aim to have experiences as if I wanted to change in the image of who I want to become. And so someone who doesn't have a time in their schedule for family, that's just going to be you for a little bit. But you can make some time. You could set a little time next week, right? And it starts there. It doesn't start with, I'm just deciding to be different. It kind of doesn't work that way. In very rare situations, such as like a car accident or some other big thing, people can have these big, profound, emotionally driven change. And that really does work. And I think that's what, you know, I don't want to say it like this, but I don't know another way to say it. Is that what saves people a lot of the time? Sometimes those real big events do save people. But for the rest of us who luckily don't have to go through that, we can only hope to have just some small experiences in the image of who we would want to become. And that's all you can hope for.
I agree. Well, I think this has been a ton of fun.
Yeah, this was amazing. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for sharing this stuff. I always love this stuff. I feel like one of the luckiest people getting to just sit in this chair and interview and listen to the story. And you made me think. Your path is just getting started, and you have this comparison is a thief of joy, right? So I won't compare you to anybody else. I'll just say I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you finding your purpose and finding a way to share it, and add me to your newsletter. I'd like that.
Likewise.
We might even, if you could, if there's an opportunity for us to put it in the show notes, we could link your newsletter to that. Because you said it best. You know, if you're going to help one person, when you were on there, when the thing that's going to stick with me is when you said, you know, when you were in need of it, you went out and looked for the books, the podcasts, the people, and now you want to be that, and you're well on your way. And hopefully this avenue helped, and I would love to have you back on soon, and help you continue your journey. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dylan. Yeah. What do you got for last little tips? Less important messages. No pressure, but
Ooh, that's a good one. I should have my notebook out.
Yeah.
I would say there's no perfect guidebook for life. There's no self-help book that's going to answer all your questions. I think it's up to you to find out and kind of do the inner work, the self-work. Apply things that work for you. If they don't work, don't apply. But yeah, there's no guidebook. You just got to find out yourself. You got to problem solve. I think, you may relate to me in many ways, and you probably don't relate to me in a lot of ways as well. I don't know. That's all I got.
That's great.
Perfect.
We were just talking about that. There are too many answers and not enough paths. Essentially, there's the one AI and Google, like path, and it shoots out an answer. What do I do when I can't get to the gym? And it's like, well, do this thing and that'll work. And then you try it. It's like, that sucked. That didn't work. So
the seven ways to get through life. Right? Instagram post.
7 wisdom tips.
It ain't gonna work.
No.
Take one of those, dwell on it for a year and a half, and then go again.
There you go. Yeah, perfect. Well said. Well, thanks, Dylan. Yeah, and if you guys, give us a follow if you like this kind of stuff. Comment. We'll put Dylan's stuff in the description, so check that out, and we'll catch you next time.